Hi everyone, welcome to ZEN and TECH, our weekly podcast focused on centering your inner geek and using technology to help you deal with the stresses of your connected life. I'm Rene, and your host for the show is Georgia. Before we begin, I just want to remind you that while Georgia is a therapist, she's not your therapist. Everything said or implied on this episode is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and shouldn't be taken in any way as a replacement for personal, professional care. But enough ass covering. Georgia, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you.
We have a special guest tonight. We have David Caolo from the fabulous 52 Tiger and TUAW website. David, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a fan of the show since its inception, and it's really exciting to be on. So thanks for having me.
Oh, right back at you. David is no newbie to podcasting. He does an amazing array. I mean, you did Sci-Fi Cast with Ged from the Icon Factory. Do you still do two shows on? Is there still 52 Pickup and Homework now, or have you consolidated?
Yeah, I've kind of got both going on because, I don't want to spend time with my wife or children. So yeah, I try to do both as those as weekly or as much as we can.
Very nice. So this is less like a guest shot and more like a crossover because David's podcast, as you might imagine, deals with the subject of working at home. And we've done a bunch of episodes about dealing with stress at work when it's a job site. And we've touched a little bit about the crazy life that people like David and I who blog live because it's not a normal life.
No.
We thought it'd be fun to kind of put it together. Can you maybe just start off giving us a little bit of an intro about what was your motivation for working at home?
Oh, sure. Unlike a lot of home workers who decided that they would like to do this for, reasons to spend time with their family or to spend time at home or to be their own boss, I sort of had the situation thrust upon me. It was in 2009, I was the IT director for a residential school out here in Massachusetts. And we found out that the doors would be closing in 6 months. And it actually took 2 months. And
Wow.
there was a little over 100 of us who were without a job. And where I live in a very small rural community. And there aren't a whole lot of tech jobs around here. Really, I live in a touristy spot. So most of the jobs are service-based, that kind of thing. And I had a real hard time finding a job. And this was just about the time I started writing for TUAW. And I just thought, well, if I work this much on TUAW and find these other random gigs out there somewhere, I can make a semblance of a living. And now I'm about, 3 or 4 years into it. And I haven't lost a house or the car, so I must be doing something right.
I think that's awesome, David, because one of the first of all, IT is one of the highest stress jobs that you can have because you're constantly having to fix other people's problems and you can never do it well enough.
Dumb
or
people's
fast
problems,
enough.
you can say it.
Yeah, well, no, I would say that, again, for people that see me for stress, I would assume, it's probably one of the top 10 jobs that people come in for. So it's a hugely stressed job. But it's amazing. How did you get over the fear to be able to say, you know what, I trust that I'm going to be able to do this on my own?
Yeah, it was absolutely paralyzing. For the first probably 2 months, I simply didn't know what to do. And not only the fear of, how am I going to pay the bills and how am I going to be able to, feed and clothe my kids, but there was a real, and I hope I don't get nailed for sexual bias here, but there's a feeling of I'm the man and I'm supposed to provide for my family, and now I'm unable to do that. And boy, that was probably the most difficult aspect to deal with. It was really, really hard. So what I did was I was just talking to people I could find about what I should do, and someone recommended there is a great career counselor who doesn't work far away, and you should go talk to her. Now, I had never done that before. I really did not know what to expect, but today I can say it was the single best thing I ever did.
That's awesome. It's awesome in twofold. One is that, and I agree, by the way, though you could, you felt worried that you would get, flamed for saying that there's a huge bias in between, the man's supposed to be the provider. It's actually a very real feeling for lots of men, and losing job having business close, even if you hated working there, it's a really hard
It's a cultural
step to
thing,
say.
right?
It's a cultural thing. It's the way that things used to be, and though we feel that things change, we want to say that things change quickly and we're equal and everything is evolved. It is not always that way. But I love that you went to get someone to help you find the path instead of saying, well, I'm lost, but I'm going to just, try to do it myself instead of, finding someone that does something right. I say always, if my car's broken, I'm going to go to someone that's a mechanic. I'm not just going to try to, get duct tape and fix it as best as I can. So I love that.
You're not supposed to do that?
Well, you've said this often before, Georgia, that we will take better care of our things than we'll take of ourselves, and we will do things to maintain our property that we will just not even think about doing to maintain our own health.
It's true. We don't listen to who we are. We don't listen to our bodies, and often type A personalities, people that are achievement oriented, perfectionistic, hard on themselves, a little bit more critical, expect to achieve, like to feel that we can do everything on our own, and that causes for
and getting help is weakness, right?
Help is weakness, and letting other people know that we went to read books or surf on the net or go to see someone still has this, well, why couldn't you just do it on your own? Yet if I'm sick and I go to the doctor, they wouldn't say that. If my car's broken, I bring it to a mechanic, they'd be like, well, that's the smart thing to do. You shouldn't be, stop duct taping the car. Go peel that off and go see someone. So I think that that's amazing. Like, that takes a lot of strength and intelligence.
For me, when I switched, I worked in enterprise software before blogging full-time. And for me, it wasn't just the risk of, because enterprise software is horribly boring, but it pays really well. And blogging is, you never really know with blogging. I mean, it's not the security of a traditional job. But I also was afraid of losing that structure. I mean, I would arrive at work at a certain time. I would have lunch at a certain time. There was almost like a prison-esque structure enforced upon me. And that meant I didn't have the responsibility of taking care of myself to a certain extent. I knew when to eat. I knew when to leave. I knew when to wake up. I knew when to go to sleep. And it's sort of like when you go from elementary school to high school or high school to college, and you suddenly have all these new responsibilities.
Yeah, it's definitely the sink or swim that you experienced in college, where when you're in high school, the teachers will be on you and say, did you get that report done? And are you having trouble with A, B, or C? Where in college, that's completely out the window. You're an adult and you're expected to navigate your way through your own collegiate career. And when you're working from home, especially if you're running a business from home, when you're the only person there, versus when you're telecommuting, you're the worker, but you're also the manager, you're also the accountant, you're also managing inventory and supply, you're doing all of those things. And you've got to be aware that no one else is going to make sure you have enough widgets in the basement. No one else is going to make sure that you take a break for lunch and that you don't work 16 hours a day. You're that person, so you have to fill all those roles.
You don't have anyone to yell at you, but then you don't have anyone to yell at you.
That's exactly right. Yes, the little number attached to OmniFocus is what yells at me.
See, and Georgia made
things to do. Yeah.
Georgia made a great point in a previous show about when you work in an office, how it's not okay to work through your lunch or to be expected to work through your lunch, that you have a right and a responsibility to take that break. And I found the same thing, like you just said, like because you're working at home, there's very little change of state. I will just work and forget about it. And Georgia made a point of saying, you should do the opposite. You should go out. You should make sure that you change where you are. So now I physically stop at a certain point and I go to Starbucks or an equivalent, place, sometimes with no internet access, so I can't work while I'm there, while I'm having lunch.
Right. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Dave, is how do you mediate people once you work from home, which is a wonderful thing. I think it's great to work from home. But once you work from home, often people do not consider that, I don't mean
they don't
to
respect
say
it.
Real work, but they don't give it the same amount of respect as you would if you are working from an office, in that if you are married and have kids, they'll say, oh, well, you can take care of the kids. You're already at home. and your day kind of flows through. You have to do everything. So do you
You
have
can
some
pick me up. You can do this. I mean, yeah, it's basically like you're on vacation.
course. And you're not. You still have work and time and efforts. And how do you block out times for different things and deal with that issue of, this is when my time stops. This is when I'm going to eat. I can't, for this period, take care of, say, the kids or take you shopping. How do you mediate that?
Yeah, that's a huge challenge. And it's funny because I remember the episode when you said essentially, don't eat at your desk. And I was just about to eat at my desk.
Were you really? That's
As
great.
I was listening to that, yes. And
did you put the sandwich down?
Back away from the sandwich.
Right. No, I just ate it with a huge guilty feeling. Right now, I try not to do that. And I'm not 100%. Sometimes I still do. And Rene, you can relate to this. Sometimes something happens that you ought to write about just at 12 o'clock when you would typically go downstairs and make a sandwich. And even if I'm not the one who's writing it at TUAW, I have to make sure it was assigned to someone, it's being written in a timely manner. I edit it as quickly as possible and post it as quickly as possible. So sometimes, I know I'm probably making an excuse, Georgia, but sometimes something happens and I have to be seated in this thing. But that's a big thing, is how I allocate my time between work and home, because they are in physically the same building. And I do have two kids who are 7 and 9 years old. And part of why I do this is because I do want to spend time with them. But you're right, I'm very much at work. So there's a few things that I do. One is I adhere to a schedule. So the kids are off. I get them to the bus around 7. I'm home around 7:20. And now I have from 7 o'clock until 2 when the house is empty and it's just me. So I've got to absolutely maximize those hours as working hours and try to get everything done during that time that I possibly can. Because when the kids coming home around 2, we're back from the bus around 2:30. They're up until 7, and I've tried to sneak in work during those hours. And it doesn't work for a number of reasons, because it doesn't work. Because they're just here.
It's like lowering your guard at a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
Right.
And B, it shouldn't work, because my dad was self-employed too, and he worked like a dog. He was doing 16-hour days, 6 days a week. And if you ask him now what he thought, he'll say he is happy he had the opportunity, but he does regret that he saw a large part of our childhood pass by through his office window. And I certainly don't want to be in that situation. So when it's 2 o'clock, I'm done, and I have to be done. And I'll leave my phone upstairs, and I'll go downstairs. My desk is upstairs, and I'll go downstairs and be with the kids until 2 o'clock. And there are times when I'm tempted to just do this thing or just do that thing, but I know I can't, because I have to be here for the kids. Now, there are times when I've got a million projects, right? For some reason, this week has been crazy. Everything is due this week, where I have to sneak up and work. But I really try hard not to work from 2 to 7. The other thing about having that schedule is knowing that you might have to abandon it at any moment. A kid's sick home from school, the internet is down, some people are doing road work outside. All those things require you to alter your schedule, and they can happen at any time. So one thing I do is I have
the Apple Store is down.
An emergency backup office. I love to go to the library to work, the public library, because it's big and clean and well lit, and the internet's free and nice and fast. I know a lot of people go to like coffee houses and things. So have like an emergency backup office ready to go, and have planned your sort of mobile office. Really, all I need, I'm lucky, is a computer and internet access, but have something sort of a mini micro office to go already planned ahead of time. So if you do have to take off for the day, you're not going to lose a whole lot of time in transit.
I know Arnold Kim from Mac Rumors has actually explored. They have offices that are kind of communal offices where you can pay a little bit and work at the office for a day a week or 2 days a week, and with other people who are in similar fields. And I think that's a great alternative as well.
Yeah, I spent about a year as a member of one of those co-working spaces, and it was really, really nice. One of the big benefits is meeting other folks and getting gigs, and having meetings with clients in a more professional setting than Starbucks. But I don't really do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
When we meet, it's in IRC, so I can be sitting anywhere. So I stopped going. But for a lot of people, that's a great thing to do. And it costs a lot less money than renting a whole office.
Yeah.
I think that a good way is to deal with stress in many different situations is to mediate a certain amount of time. I love that you say that you try to fit it all in when the children are not there. And then you set a certain period of time when you are just dad. Now, I don't know how easy it would be because it's a long period. Again, we deal better with, for this hour, I'm going to be playing with the kids. And then for these 30 minutes, it's going to be me time. I'm going to deal with something else. But if you are multitasking, your stress level goes up because we don't, even though women, like we say that women can multitask and men cannot, women don't multitask either. We are able to handle social situations that are happening and we naturally can interpret it. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I'm not going to get into it right now. But it increases stress when you're playing with the kids, but actually thinking, I really should be writing this story right now because it's important and I have to have it done in 2 hours. It might even be good to say, kids, would you mind giving me 30 minutes? If they're old enough to understand what that may be, you may do this. And when, it's this time, come to get me and I'm going to try to do something so that when you're with the children, you're really able to enjoy that time. When you're working, you're really able to work and then your stress level goes down. Even saying I'm going to do this at 6 and plan it and stick to it will help a little bit deal with the stress of having to try to do too many things at once and doing all of them poorly.
Yeah, or playing with the kids and just perseverating on this task the whole time.
I hate
Or using one to procrastinate against the other.
Yes.
Yeah, I do that too.
You mentioned OmniFocus earlier. Are there any specific apps or you mentioned your phone as well, any specific apps or gear that you particularly like for working at home?
Yeah, probably in the order of importance. IRC is probably the most important thing for me just because at TUAW, that's our office. If you're on duty, you're in the IRC chat room, and that's how we communicate with each other about, assigning posts and getting things reviewed and published. That's our number one tool on the Mac. I use either Adium or there's an app called Colloquy, which works really well, and that's also available on iOS. It's universal and it works great. I do use OmniFocus for projects and tasks, but I use a lot of paper. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
No, absolutely.
I do that too. They yell at me all the time. They make fun of me. I'm very analog.
No, but you've always said that writing on paper is palpably different than typing on digital formats.
It makes us feel much calmer because we believe that it has its existence in reality, whereas we know that computers are more, they're able to disappear with the deletion of one button.
Yeah, paper feels more permanent.
Hard drive.
It requires fire to destroy it.
When we're really stressed about something, writing it down on paper will lower our stress more than writing it on a computer. Though emailing it to yourself is not bad either if you really enjoy that.
Yeah, because Google will keep it forever.
Yeah. There are specific paper forms that I love to use. I don't know if you know David Say. You can find him at davidseah.com. He's made a bunch of stationery that he calls the Printable CEO, and I've been using these for years. There's one form called the Emergent Task Planner, where you map out exactly what you're going to do for the day. And it allows for shifting. So like I said, if, the internet goes down, you've got to travel to the library, you can move things down and you can track how long things take. And there's like an inbox and a note space. And every night before I go to bed, I write down on my Emergent Task Planner what I'm going to do tomorrow. It's really awesome. And he's got a project tracker and then a task tracker too, that when you break your project down to smaller tasks, you can move those things down. So I usually have a manila folder.
Alarm?
No.
See, that's the thing. I'll just lose it. But that's just the thing. I need a little tiny
You need
clock
RFID
buzzer.
and everything.
Yeah, and a little buzzer thing. Hourglass.
Do you still use a laptop, David, or have you switched to an iPad and a keyboard like all the cool kids?
No. I'm the odd man out. I can't get what I work done with an iPad. I probably shouldn't say that, but I can't. And mostly it's the nature of the browser. When I'm writing posts, I'll have 10, 15, 20 tabs open at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know how that goes. I'll have an RSS app open at the same time, and I'm jumping back and forth. And I just can't do that to my satisfaction on an iPad. If I'm running just a single article that I know I can take my time with and have more fun with, great, I'll use the keyboard. But I just can't use the iPad for regular work during working hours.
Yeah, I can use it as a second screen, but my primary screen, like you, I have to have a ton of browsers, usually Photoshop, usually Twitter client, just all sorts of things going on at once, which is not the iPhone, the iPad's wheelhouse.
Yeah, yep, I agree.
Right. I like to also touch type. So, Rene, you went through some different keyboards before that are good. If you do like using the iPad, I usually use my MacBook Air. But if you want to use your iPad and it's I don't usually have a whole bunch of browsers open for when I'm doing my therapy work. But Rene, what was your favorite so far of the keyboards that you had for the iPad?
So far, we've only tested the in-case or origami, which uses the actual Apple Bluetooth keyboard. We've tested the not Jot, the Adonit Writer Plus, which is a case with a keyboard in it, and the new Logitech ultra thin keyboard. And I like that one. It's a thicker smart cover that basically looks like the other half of the aluminum sandwich of an iPad. You just take your iPad out, stick it in there, and start typing, and it's fairly phenomenal.
That thing's pretty cool, I gotta say. I'm very tempted by it.
Yeah, Seth Clifford from our other shows got one, and he has said that he's like a Hulk typing monster on his iPad now.
Hulk type.
Puny keyboard.
I would like to ask Dave, do you also feel that working from home, that you don't have the same social interaction that you would want? Or do you enjoy the fact that you have your own little cave while you're at home and you don't have to worry about anyone else bothering you?
It's both. I'm definitely an alone time person. I recognize that I have to have X amount of alone time in a week or even in a day. I just enjoy it. It's not that I'm antisocial or that I'm not a gregarious person. I definitely am. But I really like to have that hour, those 2 hours a day if I can, where it's just quiet and I can be home alone. That being said, I often miss talking to other adults, I've got to say. There's a large collection of home workers out here on the Cape where I live. And, this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. I found a Twitter tool. I can't remember what it is anymore, but it allowed you to search for users by zip code. And you can set the radius and everything. And I did that and found a bunch of people and followed them simply because they live near me. We all started chatting, and eventually we said, hey, why don't we get together? And a lot of those people are still my good friends today, because it's definitely hard to meet people, once you're out of school. When you graduate and go to work, you typically make your friends at work. Well, the only person at work is me.
And you.
And I know me pretty well. I talk to someone else once in a while. But yeah, Georgia, it's definitely hard to make and maintain relationships when you work at home.
And there is the Twitter, which most of us use as sort of an online water cooler. And I must admit to bothering David quite a bit on occasion on Twitter.
But never a bother.
I'm the same thing. I don't necessarily need to be alone or with people, but I like changing state. I don't like being one way or the other for too long. So I'll get out and go work at the mall or a coffee shop or someplace just to have a different environment, and so I don't get stale.
Yeah,
right.
Sometimes
Plus,
I'll go to the library. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think that your point actually continue, Dave, because I think that's what I was going to add to. Please.
Oh, I was just to say, sometimes I go to the library simply for something new to look at. And for instance, today I carried my laptop downstairs and sat on the couch.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted something new to look at than that white wall that's right over there that you all can't see that I look at all day long. And I can, open the curtains and look outside for a little while. So yeah, I will change it up a little bit too.
He wants us to believe there's actually a wall there. Nice try, David.
Yeah, that's what the camera crew is. They're right over.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Right. Because if work is your home, then your work stress is in that environment.
Yeah.
Usually people hopefully come home from work to a happy home life, not always the case. And then home is where they can decompress and relax. But if work is where you are at home, then you're not getting that from being in that environment. So it's great that you both change it up and go to a different place. Even if you're going outside, going into a different room, looking at something different, or taking a walk for a few minutes if you need. That's a really important thing. I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer it if you think that it is too much, but another rule is not to work in your bedroom. Do you abide by that rule? Because it changes, again, work stress, and so you're not going to be able to sleep as well in your room. You don't have to answer if that's too private, so.
Do you want the truth?
Video games.
I would love, video games are fine. Work is not. Yeah, that would be fun. I would love the truth. The truth sounds good.
All right, my bed is about 36 inches away from where I'm sitting right now. And yes, I know that that's all kinds of wrong.
But it's common.
I will say this.
I mean, like, I think 2 or 3 of our podcasters do that.
This is the biggest room. But I definitely see where you're going, because when I'm in bed, I can turn my head, whatever it is, 45 degrees, and see the workspace. And of course, I associate work and stress-related work with, whatever these X square feet are.
Right.
And I know it's probably detrimental, but it's where I am.
It's the realities of the space.
Well, you could always put something up so you're not looking at it directly, even a plant or a divider, or turning the screen so it looks a little bit different. When often people that do a stressful job will put on a certain jacket that's their work jacket, and then they take off the jacket when they're not working, so that it gives them that unconscious signal that now I'm off.
And boy, does it make you hate that jacket.
If you hate your job, perhaps
The embodiment of everything. Yeah.
if you hate your job, it might. Or if you use your phone, putting your phone away. So when I'm done, I'll often flip my phone. When I'm done, I'll flip my phone up, because my clients can text me if they so need, if they have an emergency or they need to discuss something. So I'll flip my phone upside down, and then I know during this period of time there's nothing, because if I see the pop-up, I'm going to want to respond and help.
Yeah.
Again, that's my...
I also found it, removing temptation, I think, is wonderful. Like, for example, when I started working at home, I stopped buying any form of junk food, because if I'm working at home and there's junk food in the house, I'm going to eat all of it. Like, all the junk food will be mine. I will turn my phone off. I have almost all notifications, like audio notifications, buzzing, beeping, stuff like that off. So I have to physically choose to be available and not the other way around.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yes.
Right. Do you work an exorbitant amount of hours because you're working from home? Because there's no 9 to 5, does that mean that you're working 12 or 14-hour days sometimes?
I'm afraid it does. That's because I really have more than one job right now, which is starting to wear me down a little bit, I'll admit here while we're talking. But during the day, I'm a full-time employee of AOL, and I'm the news editor over at the unofficial Apple weblog. So that's my...
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That's my 9 to 5, or actually my 7 to 2 job. And then the kids are home from, like I said, 2. They go to bed around 7:30. And then I start what I call the PM shift. And that's when I'll write for 52 Tiger. I'll work on the Homework podcast. I'll work on the 52 Pickup podcast. It seems like I'm constantly editing books forever.
And can I just ask you a quick aside? Because when I was originally writing posts, and then I became more of an editor, and you do a lot of work, but your name doesn't go up as often because you're helping other people get work done. So I found it was a big adjustment to go from, doing work and seeing the immediate results and gratification for that work, to having to understand that I'm now enabling people, and I don't necessarily see what I've done at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. You think of Billy Crystal in that movie where he says, "I sell air."
Yes.
Whatever the cowboy movie was. But yeah, I rarely write posts on TUAW anymore, because that's just like you're saying. I'm finding stories and passing them off to the writers, editing them, publishing them. So yes, I don't have a thing. I don't have a pile of completed widgets to look at and feel satisfied about at the end of the day. That's definitely true. And yeah, I do work a ludicrous amount. I find that I can't, work until 1 a.m. like I did when I was 22 anymore. Around 9:30, I'm tired, and around 11, I'm like, my eyes feel like sandpaper. And I know that's got to change. and hopefully someday it will. So yes, I guess the answer is I do work excessive hours.
Right. Right. Unfortunately, that's the one thing that the technology is changing, is that we are now accessible anywhere, anyhow, and people are, and bosses and other workers are expecting us to be accessible almost immediately. And in my job, it is somewhat necessary for me to be able to be accessible if someone has an emergency. But I also need to say, well, this is my time now. I should have a right to it. It almost
Yeah, if you're
seems
dead,
like,
you can't help them.
right, but it seems like bosses are expecting to encroach upon time. I love your example, Rene, of someone giving a worker a project to do at Friday at 5 o'clock when they're supposed to leave, and he says, okay, give it to me on Monday. And he says, well, there are no work hours in between Friday at 5 and Monday at 8. And he says, I'm not doing it. This is expecting me to work overtime, yet not paying me for it.
Yeah,
I love
that was Mike for the win on Twitter from Mule Design. That was
Right.
an excellent. It was a talk called literally "F you, pay me," and it's well worth listening to.
Yep,
I
that
like
is a
that.
good one.
Yeah.
But I think that extends beyond our professional lives and seeps into our personal lives as well. The fact that because I'm always connected, I must respond to a connected request. For instance, I was in the supermarket just the other day, and the woman in front of me, scanned her groceries. The bagger put them in the bags. She handed her money to the cashier just as her phone rang. And I saw her scramble to answer the phone, flip it open, put it under her ear, take her change and receipt, stuff it into her pocket, and grab her bag. And I thought, what's so compelling about that phone call that it couldn't wait literally a minute and a half
Yeah.
for you to be outside when your hands were free and you weren't engaged in an interaction with another person, being the cashier?
I actually saw a woman answering a phone call while her child was falling off a bicycle, putting the phone under one ear, half-heartedly pulling the kid onto the bike, and not even putting the phone down to stop her kid hitting the pavement.
Oh, jeez. I know there's something.
Interestingly enough, I don't have a ring on my phone, and I don't have it buzz because the vibration is just as annoying as a ring on the phone. And I don't miss it. I don't turn it on after session. During a session, of course, it would be horribly rude for my phone to ring. I don't want my client's phone
hold on
ring.
a
That
second.
doesn't bother me. But that would be really bad. But I keep it off all the time, and I don't miss it. I do not miss it.
Well, that's that
people know.
other people's expectations, not our obligations thing again.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's not an issue. If there's something, an emergency, you can call me on my house line, and I may pick that up or send me a message. And when I'm ready, I'll answer it. It does lower my stress. I actually met someone that had a child's voice on their phone saying, please pick me up, please pick me up. And I went, oh my God, my stress level went from 0 to 20 listening to that on my own. And I'm like, you have to change that phone ring. It's going to be exceptionally stressful for you because it's stressing me out, and I don't have anxiety. But
It was generating it.
yes.
I do now.
I'm going to start wrapping us up. David, thank you very much for joining us. That was awesome.
Thank you. I was thrilled to do it.
Where can we find out more about you, your blogging, and your wonderful shows?
Sure. You can find me at the unofficial Apple weblog, which is TUAW.com. My personal site is 52tiger.net. That's number 52tiger.net. And I am David Caolo on Twitter.
Nice. And Georgia, I know I should know this, but where can I find you?
You can find me on Twitter at GeorgiaTIPB. You can also find me on the website, www.zenandtech.tv. And thank you, Dave, so much for joining us. That was a wonderful time, and some great suggestions to other people that may be thinking about working from home or hoping that they can make the transition and that deal with that jump of fear to be able to do that.
And listen to David's show, because this is just a little bit of it. He does this week in, week out. It's well worth listening to.
Oh, thanks.
It is. I do not say that. I say that as a what is it? Someone who is in that situation and requires that sort of that sort of stuff. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at Zen and Tech or at zenandtech.tv. You can email us at podcast@zenandtech.tv or just leave a comment when the show goes live. For more of our shows, you can visit mobilenations.com/shows. We have a wide-ranging variety of internet fare. And I want to thank our outstanding chat room. We didn't have a chance to spend too much time with you this week, but we will make it up to you next week. And we always appreciate you being there and sharing the show with us.
Thanks, everyone.